In the summer of 1968, the administrator of TF Industries hired a new group of mercenaries to participate in the Gravel War, a ridiculous, never-ending conflict between two brothers who cared only for themselves. In this latest batch of fighters, there was one whose identity was shrouded in mystery. This man was known for his many exploits and achievements as a priest, a park ranger, a best friend, a lawyer, a father, and most importantly, a rocket man who annoyed and frustrated everyone he encountered. And I say that as an engineer main. Beyond the chaos and explosions, his story was a fascinating one. Who was he before he joined the Gravel War? Why was he told to stop teleporting bread? And how did his story end? In this video, we explore the lore and story behind Mr. Jane Doe, the soldier in Team Fortress. Where do we begin the tale of the legendary Sergeant Jane Doe and the role of the soldier in the Gravel War? Well, we have to go all the way back to 1850. This year was incredibly significant in the Team Fortress timeline. The patriarch of the Mann family, Zephaniah Mann, passed away, and in his will, he left a continent-sized parcel of land he had purchased in the Badlands to his twin sons, Redmond and Blutatch, to be split equally. The brothers despised each other, and instead of sharing, they each hired their own team of mercenaries through TF Industries to claim the land by force. This was the start of the Gravel War, one that would not end for some time. Builders League United versus Reliable Excavation Demolitions, Red versus Blue. In this first cycle of the war, Stonewall Jackson, a Confederate general, was hired as the first soldier. By his side was Abraham Lincoln as the team's pyro, Nikolai Tesla as an engineer, Davy Crockett as a sniper, Billy the Kid as a scout, Fu Manchu as a spy, John Henry as a heavy, Alfred Noble as a demoman, and Sigmund Freud as the medic. Blutatch believed he had a strong team. However, when Redmond's mercenaries fought back with equal force, a stalemate began. As the 1800s neared their end, the Mann brothers saw no end in sight for the war, but recognized the limited human mortality. In his stubborn nature, Blutatch hired a local engineer, Radigan Conager, to construct him a machine to keep him alive. TF Industries needed this war to continue on for as long as possible, so the administrator reached out to the engineer and asked him to also build one of these machines for Redmond. In 1894, the machines were completed and the war continued. By 1930, the war had dragged on for 80 years and the mercenaries had either died or grown too old to fight. In real-world history, Stonewall Jackson passed away at the age of 39 on May 10, 1863, after being shot by friendly fire at the Battle of Chancellorsville during the American Civil War. Though he survived the initial injury, he later died from complications of pneumonia. As 108 years old themselves, the Mann brothers called out for new mercenaries to fight in their war to claim the land, and TF Industries delivered. With a new team, there was a new soldier. Ross the Soldier was an absolute powerhouse on the team. With his main weapon, a rocket launcher, he destroyed almost everything in his path, which allowed the other members of his team to follow behind him to secure victory. When in close combat or in close spaces, his secondary weapon, a double-barreled shotgun, came in extremely useful. As with every class on this team, Ross also had his own special kind of grenade, a nail grenade. When activated, it floated and launched out nails in every direction. Ross was an essential member of Team Fortress, and over the years in this endless war, he grew close to another member a lot more than the others, Greg the Scout. Meanwhile, in the Midwest United States, another young soldier wanted to play his part in the Second World War. However, despite his best efforts, he was rejected by every branch of the United States military. Even now, his real name is unknown. But as a proud patriot with a love for his country, he took on the name of Sergeant Jane Doe and bought a ticket to Europe so that he could fight on his own. As Ross fought in the Gravel War and perfected the art of the rocket jump at the cost of his health, Jane killed every Nazi he saw in Poland. On one occasion, he even voluntarily entered a prisoner of war camp. Now, Jane had many strong traits. He was not the brightest, but he was patriotic, loyal, tenacious, and always did what he believed to be right. He never accepted no as an answer, and this mentality broke his captors. They asked him to leave. Jane followed the words of Sun Tzu. If fighting is sure to result in victory, then you must fight. And he did. Over the years and his traversal of Europe, Jane completed 3 tours of service. Well, self-assigned tours, and to commemorate his actions, he created his own medals and wore them with pride. It was in 1949, however, that he was informed that the Second World War had come to an end 4 years before, and he had spent those years simply murdering people. He just needed a new war to fight in. In 1968, at 146 years old, the Mann brothers once again reached out to TF Industries to hire more mercenaries. Team Fortress had pulled along the stalemate, but it was time for a new group to hopefully put an end to this conflict. Team Fortress was renamed to Team Fortress Classic, and new mercenaries were hired. In the summer of '68, Mr. Sergeant Jane Doe was offered the position of the team soldier, and he accepted. Just like his predecessor, Ross, Jane the soldier was lethal with his primary weapon, a rocket launcher. It held 4 loaded rockets and fired them at around 47 miles per hour. His opponents really had no chance. In his wake, Jane left only chaos, body parts, and blood. He even collected 8 heads as trophies and placed them for all to see. Alongside Misha the Heavy, Tavish the Demoman, Jeremy the Scout, Mr. Ludwig the Medic, Mr. Mundy the Sniper, Dell the Engineer, the mysterious and secretive Pyro and Spy, Jane was fearless and jumped right into the battlefield. He loved war and what it meant to fight for a purpose. In close combat, he used a shotgun, and if someone were brave enough to get really close, his handy shovel was strong enough to remove a head from its shoulders. Having moved to the Badlands for this job, Jane also searched for a new place to live, and was lucky enough to find an eldritch castle of dark magic owned by the mighty Marasmus. The wizard did not see the soldier as a roommate, however. He saw him as a familiar who also helped pay the bills. One of these experiments resulted in Jane becoming a lawyer through magical means. He also became a priest in certain states and Guam, but it is unknown if this was also because of Marasmus. Jane was a man of simple taste. He loved the rib place and Captain Dan's army surplus soup. He also absolutely hated solicitations, so in his second home, more of a hideout, he cut out 2 holes in the door so that he could break the necks of those who interrupted him. As the war went on, the soldier was offered additional weapons supplied by Manco to destroy everything he saw. The direct hit, Liberty Launcher, and Beggar's Bazooka were just 3 of so many. As a rocket man, the rocket jumper launcher was a favourite as it removed all self-inflicted blast damage and gave him additional armour so that he could launch across vast spaces. The war was mysterious and important, but he still attempted to have a somewhat normal life outside of it. On one occasion, Jane became best friends with the Red Demoman. Together, they went to Las Vegas, a Gravel Pit of America tour, basketball games, whiskey and ribs, fought the police, and even visited the Eye Museum. However, 6 months later, the soldier was tracked down by a messenger of the administrator. She did not like that 2 people from opposite teams had spent time together, and she gave Jane a choice. He could be driven to the nearest gravel pit and killed for gross insubordination, or he could kill his best friend, who had already agreed to kill him, and be rewarded with custom-built weapons. Loyalty meant a lot to the soldier, and he chose to be killed. Yet, when the messenger played a video of the Demoman calling him a civilian, he changed his mind. Unknown to him, the video had been manipulated. But still, a war between the soldier and Demoman began and waged on over the next week, in which 6,406,065 Demomen were killed and 6,372,979 soldiers were killed. This was not the only time the administrator attempted to stop her mercenaries from discussing their contract with others. In another threat, she stole Jane's head collection and warned him that they would be kept safe unless he and the other mercenaries broke the terms of their contract. Although the soldier had never participated in the Second World War, he still spoke about it fondly with his own stories to cardboard cutouts of war heroes. One evening, he laughed about how Salty Pete had dug a trench with a shovel and that a lot of good men had died falling into it, and of how the tea rations they were given had been swill. It was also on this evening that he witnessed a rocket crash from space, a rocket full of alien guns. The assistant of the administrator, Miss Pauling, was kept busy by her boss to make sure the mercenaries continued to fight in the war, unaware of the true nature of the war. This also meant that whenever something happened outside of work that could impact the mercenaries' ability to fight, she had to make it go away, and Jane was normally in the center of her problems. One time, the soldier discovered what he believed to be a bomb distributing factory, and he convinced both Jeremy the scout and the spy to blow it up with him. In reality, it had been a mall Santa training facility. Although it had been Jane's idea, only Jeremy was caught and arrested. As a lawyer, Soldier defended his client. That was until the scout named Jane as the person who had told him to do it. As a punishment, the soldier, scout, and spy were given community service at the Two Fort Mall. For his part, Jane played Santa, but as expected, this did not go smoothly. He did not like the haircut of one of the children on his lap, so he shaved his head and then beat up the child's father to show him what it meant to be a man. He also fought Old Nick, the spirit of Australian Christmas. As Halloween of 1970 arrived, the mercenaries all came together for a party, but when Marasmus invited himself, antagonized the Demoman whose eye he had stolen when he was a child, and insulted the food, another fight broke out. Jane snapped the staff of his roommate and attempted to slap the magic out of him as the rest of the mercenaries fought with the haunted, missing eye of the Demoman, Monoculus. That Halloween night was eventful, yet the next day, Jane returned home to the castle and everything went back to normal. Jane the soldier was very good at his job and grew pretty close to the other mercenaries. He knew what he liked and he just did what he wanted. On another seemingly normal day, over at one of Red's secret headquarters, Dell the engineer discovered something odd. A piece of bread he had sent through one of his teleporters had grown a tumor. When he mentioned this to Dr. Ludwig, their medic, they believed that if this could happen to bread, it could happen to the mercenaries who used them every day. The mercenaries were then told that they had approximately 3 days to live before a tumor killed them, and while all of them went off and did their own thing, Jane picked a different path. He spent this time with a teleporter and did nothing but teleport bread. Ludwig and Dell later discovered that the bread did not contain a tumor. It actually grew into self-aware, aggressive birthmark that thrived only in pure wheat. While it would have normally been fine to take out just a small creature, when Soldier revealed he had done nothing but teleport bread over the past 3 days, the team were forced to fight something much larger. After the death of the creature, the soldier was warned, no more teleporting bread. By the time 1971 arrived, the gravel war between Redmond and Blutatch had dragged on for over 120 years, and then it came to a sudden end. Their secret third brother, Grey, who had been stolen by an eagle just after his birth, tricked them into a meeting and then murdered them. As the last man standing, Gray claimed the land his brothers had fought for, took over both Reliable Excavation Demolitions and Builders League United, and then fired the mercenaries who had fought in his brother's pointless war. Although Jane had lost what he believed to be the best job in the world, another opportunity arrived very quickly. Gray Man wanted Manco, the family business his late father had given away to the Hale family, and to get it, he created an army of robots to take it by force. With the requirement for defense, Saxton Hale reached out to TF Industries, and Jane was rehired to fight for Manco. Meanwhile at home, as Man vs. Machine began, Marasmus grew extremely frustrated with his roommate. Jane never picked up after himself. He stole the wizard's Kill Me, Come Back Stronger pills, thinking they were his heart medication pills, wore Marasmus's robes and stretched them out, and often filled the toilets with sour cream. The final straw was when Jane used a skull forged in hell that fed on souls as a bowl, an ancient artifact the mighty wizard had painstakingly procured. In a rage, he kicked out the soldier and placed an advertisement in the Two-Foot Reader. It read, "Magician's familiar for sale. Soldier is a bright-eyed, loyal little fellow looking for his forever home. Not house-trained, would make a great familiar for wizards just starting out. Call Marasmus the Magician at 555-0992. $3 or for free or best offer." With his problem dealt with, Marasmus left for the 1156th WizardCon in Minnesota, an event he had been invited to speak at on the topic of living with a non-wizard. Just 3 days later, however, Marasmus returned home to find Jane had broken into his castle and everything was chaos. Raccoons wandered the lawn, a washing machine had been set on fire, a refrigerator had been sealed shut with something inside, and was in the process of being buried. Because of this, every raccoon in the greater Badlands area had been moved into this castle. When the city heard about this, they decided to turn the castle into a raccoon sanctuary. As Jane had also taken on the role of the park ranger of this area, he was given ownership to run it. As for Marasmus, well, he was kicked out. The wizard was so tired of Jane's antics and snapped. He could not kill the soldier because he had taken his Kill Me, Come Back Stronger pills, but he could kill everyone Jane cared about, the mercenaries. So, that Halloween night, Marasmus fought with the mercenaries and lost once again. Having lost everything, he accepted defeat and left the Badlands to start a new life from the plague that was the soldier. With a castle all to himself and his raccoons, Jane looked for additional ways to make money. As a lawyer, he offered his services in the Two-Foot Bystander and claimed to be the best lawyer, that he would take any case. It was on a dark, rainy night at Castle Marasmus that Park Ranger Sergeant Jane Doe had a knock at the door. The spirits of the Mann brothers had seen his advertisement in the Two-Foot Bystander and wanted legal help to determine who had won their war. With his expert legal knowledge granted to him by magic, Jane explained that as neither of them had passed on to the next world, none of them had actually lost. The winner would be the last one to pass over. He suggested that an exorcism could help, but as he was not a priest in this state, he could not perform one. As the war between Manco and Grey Man continued, Miss Pauling and the mercenaries dealt with the overwhelming task of trying to figure out which region Grey would attack next. In just the Badlands alone, there were 306 Manco plants, office buildings, warehouses, and outlet malls. Yet, unknown to them, the soldier had gone on one of his self-appointed missions. He had dressed up in his robot Halloween costume from the year before and infiltrated Grey Man's base. The robots could not tell he was human, and he learned that the next assault was planned to take place at the Manco facility at 20 Gravel Pit Way at exactly 1 p.m. When he revealed this information to the other mercenaries, they did not believe him at first, but when the robots did attack that facility at that time, they actually decided to take him seriously and later infiltrated the base themselves, dressed as robots. It was only when Grey introduced his latest robot that it pointed them out as humans. As the war continued into 1972, Gray realized this war would never end and he had fallen into the same stalemate situation his brothers had. So instead, he entered Manco and tricked Saxton Hale into giving the company over to him. Defeated, Saxton left the country, and without a war to fight again, the mercenaries were fired. Without a job to pay for his raccoon sanctuary / castle of eldritch magic, Jane was evicted and decided to make a move for a fresh start, and where better than where Marasmus had fled to, Los Angeles. Everything changed over the next 6 months. Upon his arrival in LA, Jane the soldier discovered a cave lined with gold and decided to make it his home so that he could protect it. This, however, was not gold. It was an element both Gray Man and the administrator both sought after: Australia. Meanwhile, he also took on the role of a tour guide. He showed them amazing sights such as the place where Dick Van Dyke held his guts in his hands after taking a musket shot in the stomach, the Beatles under some submerged logs, which implied that he may have murdered the Beatles, and finally, on this tour specifically, the home of Tom Jones. This addition to the tour, however, was not random. Jane had discovered that Tom had opened up his home to Marasmus as a roommate, and when the soldier entered the home and met Tom, well, it went as well as expected. He snapped his neck. This moment broke Marasmus, and he asked why the soldier always had to come in and ruin his life. Jane told him that he was fully within his legal rights as his old roommate to kill his new stupid roommate. He was sad after he had lost his job and castle, so he killed Tom Jones. In the wizard's 6,000 years of life, agreeing to be Jane's roommate was his only regret, and if this day was not bad enough, it was about to get worse. In the background, Miss Paulding had been asked to assemble a team once again by the administrator for a new mission. So, with the police having been called, Paulding dressed up as a police officer and asked the magician to check Tom Jones' pulse so that his fingerprints would be on the victim. When Jane and Paulding left, the real police showed up and arrested Marasmus for the murder. Over the following days, the soldier helped Paulding bring the team back together. After his hand was cut off by the pyro and reattached by a vet, they tracked down Scout and Spy in Twofold, who was set to be hanged. Jane was offended when he overheard Scout call him a bad lawyer to his new lawyer, so he killed the new lawyer, which resulted in him being sentenced to be hanged. Luckily, Miss Paulding got them out of it, as she always did. After being sent to the Zhugzha Mountains in Siberia by Miss Paulding to track down the Heavy, they were welcomed back to Misha's home, and it was here that Jane met one of Heavy's 3 sisters, Zana. Zana had not seen a man in many years since their family had gone into hiding, and after Scout rejected her offer, Jane was happy to oblige. During dinner, Jeremy and the Heavy sisters convinced him to return to the team as Jane and Zana got closer, and when Misha agreed, Zana decided she wanted to come too, with the soldier. Miss Paulding had been given a very specific mission by the administrator, and to make sure it was done properly, she gave the mercenaries their own tasks. She wanted to track down the last known cache of Australium in the world, a cache located in the sunken nation of New Zealand. For his part, Jane was sent with Spy to procure a submarine from the Australian Naval Submarine Base to get there. Unknown to Miss Paulding, Zana also came along. Jane knew how special this person was. She was just like him. She liked violence and did what she thought was right. Before they entered the base, he told her to treat everyone inside as violently as possible, and then he gave her something special. Although he had not finished it, he had begun making a necklace of human ears, and he hoped to add ears to it as the war continued. For her, this necklace signified 2 things. 1, that he intended to marry her, and 2nd, that he intended to impregnate her. With such a sweet and romantic gesture, Zana accepted his proposal. In high spirits, the duo broke the necks of the Australian sailors inside and procured a submarine. Yet, these Australians were no threat at all. Since the country had lost their access to Australia, they had become weak and agreeable. As honourable people, Zana and Soldier reset the necks of those they had snapped. Still, it did not stop Jane from asking if he could have some of their ears. Now, although Miss Pauling had put together a pretty well thought out plan to acquire the lost Australia, it did not go to plan. When Pauling, Pyro, Sniper, Zana, Spy, Soldier and Demoman arrived in New Zealand, they discovered this Australium had been sent into space. In the background, Greyman also had his own goal. He wanted to track down the administrator who had gone into hiding, and to do it, he hired Team Fortress Classic. Soldier Ross was back in the game, and when they ambushed the current Team Fortress in New Zealand, they killed Sniper and brought the rest back for questioning. Later, on Grey's Island, in the interrogation room with Beatrice the Pyro, Jane felt at home. Yes, he was the prisoner, but he had always dreamt about the day he would be tortured for valuable information. Unfortunately for him, he liked to talk and revealed that only Miss Pauling knew where the administrator was. Without any valuable information to retrieve, Beatrice decided to kill him slowly in front of his fiancée with the plan to kill her next. Yet, as resourceful as ever, Zana cut off her hand and trapped the Pyro inside of her suit with a grenade, killing her. Having saved her future husband, Zana realized what she had done to herself, and as she panicked that she had become a handleless monster, Jane told her that she was ravishing as he made her a tourniquet. He was the drill sergeant of her heart. As this chaos continued, Soldier and Zana rescued Pauling and Spy, during which they killed another two of the classic mercenaries, the Demoman and the Spy. Together, Zana and Jane were a powerhouse, yet when Misha finally arrived on the island, he was not too happy to find out his little sister was engaged to his teammate. But before he could do anything, the mercenaries were attacked by robots. As Zana, Jane, Tavish, Miss Pauling, Misha, Jeremy, Saxton and Mags fought the onslaught of robots sent by the classic Heavy. Inside, Ross and his friend, Greg, prepared their weapons to kill the mercenaries who had killed their teammates. However, to them, not everything was about the money their boss had promised them. They thought about maybe after this, together they could clear out an old safe house and turn it into an orphanage. There, they would have an endless supply of free kids to... Well, before Greg could finish that thought, Pyro put them down. And this was the end of Classic Soldier's story. With the Soldier and Scout dead, only the Classic Engineer and Classic Heavy remained from Team Fortress Classic. To really get into this battle, to feel free and feel the wind on their skin, Jane convinced Zana to take off her clothes and fight the robots naked, with some honey. The nudity, the violence, they loved America. By the time they had cleared the robots and put back on their clothes, their Heavy had defeated the Classic Heavy. As Miss Pauling complained that she had failed a task set to her by the administrator, Jane took the rare opportunity of silence to propose to Zana properly. Against the wishes of the Heavy, he got down on one knee and pulled the pin out of a grenade to act as a ring. And she said yes. Yet Misha did not approve. He wanted the best for his sister and believed the Soldier could not support her. But Jane was confused by this. Why did everyone think he had no money? When he revealed what he believed to be gold from his cave to Misha, he expected praise, but the Heavy knew what this was. Australia. Before he knew it, he was pulled back into a mission by Miss Pauling for the administrator, one that came with her death. He did not understand completely why he was even here, but when it came to an end, he and Zana planned a new life. Over the following 7 years, Jane and Zana officially married and had 2 children. General Patton Doe, and Georgia Washington Doe. Even with children, and without the background noise of a war connected to the Mann family or the administrator, Jane still continued to get himself into trouble. In the winter of 1979, he borrowed 12,000 won from the Korean mafia and used Marasmus's name instead of his. It also just so happened that the Does needed a babysitter to watch their children for when they went to visit the old mercenary gang. In classic soldier action, they broke into the Badlands Correctional Institute with their very strong children to break Uncle Marasmus out. However, when the Korean mafia tracked them down, Soldier watched as his best friend was tortured to death because of him. Jane was rescued by his brother-in-law, and as a genuine man of honor, he agreed to keep the brick Marasmus haunted with him so that they could be together forever. He also went and collected the ghost of Tom Jones too. Marasmus was truly Jane's best friend. With this action, Jane and Marasmus were equal with everything they had done to each other over the years. Jane the soldier had had a long and interesting life of chaos and violence. A rocket man who would hopefully pass on his knowledge to his children if there were ever another pointless war to fight in. Having done that huge timeline and looked at every story in detail, I can say that aside from the engineer, I will say that The Soldier has probably my favourite story, especially the addition given in the final comic. I love that he got his happy ending, and his children were just like him. Personally, I hate fighting soldiers. My sentry guns never stand a chance, but I do understand that class specifically takes a lot of skill to master. Not something I have been able to do. The best part about making these videos is that I get to view the game completely different when I next play it. I fight a soldier and I smile thinking about how he ruined Marasmus's life, or how he had a head collection. The lore of this series is crazy and perfect. I am also very much into Severance right now, and there is a quote in the script from it, if you can find it. I couldn't help myself. That was everything I wanted to say. If you enjoyed this video, then I would love you to subscribe to the channel, like the video if you liked it, dislike it if you did not, and let me know in the comments below what you thought. Finally, I would like to thank my Gold Tier patrons and channel members: Queen Arby, Lewis, Oren X, Drakey Phoenix, Daniel Cal Drawings, 501st Clone Boy, Ruben Mendoza, Imperial Embers, Canifex, Jimsy, Average Soul, Azu, Jonas, Yali Rodriguez, and Detroit. What did you think of this topic? Was the soldier a good guy? And what would you like me to cover next? Let me know in the comments below. This is where our story ends. Check back soon for a new one.